So you've combusted me, and my all hopes of journalistic independence are now revealed. That unfortunately I've known Shai for a long time. Every bit of advice I gave him was wrong. Fortunately, he ignored all of it. I mean, it's really an extraordinary story of personal reinvention. I mean, you know, 2.5 years ago, you were a software guy.
Year and a half ago.
Year and a half ago, you were software. This is a lifetime software entrepreneur. You know, web and enterprise software. And I just came back from Frankfurt this afternoon, and I was riding in the same seat that he rode what?
I feel your pain.
The 154 from Frankfurt. You did it what? Twice a month, 3 times a month?
Yeah, I'd cross that ocean probably 2 or 3 times in those seats every month.
It was a tremendous success. And then he went to Davos and had this moment, and you know, to watch a guy kind of watch the light go off and say, wait, I'm gonna completely change the direction of my career, and I'm gonna do something that no one thinks is possible. And those 3 smart guys in the room all thought was crazy, and just powered through. And here we are. So it's you know, I've lost all journalistic independence. I can't even admit that I'm sort of on his side because I've been wrong throughout. But I'm going to try to ask questions that some of them I know the answer to. Many of them I don't know the answer to. And I'm going to start with California, which is brand new. California, in many ways, seems like the obvious candidate. It's green. You know, the technology aspects of what you're doing are obvious. The capital, you know, sources, etc. But in many ways, it seems it doesn't have the advantages of some of the other places. We don't tax our cars at 100%. The gas is much cheaper than it is elsewhere. We don't have those kind of, you know, islands where we tend to drive beyond California sometimes. Right. Tell me about the economics. How does California compare to, you know, Denmark or Israel?
Poorly.
Yeah.
No, I mean, there are interesting elements in here. So one of the things that we've identified fairly early is if you go by pure economics, you want to go to the places where gasoline is priced the highest, where the population is the most dense, yeah, and where people actually have more access to their own parking spots. So Bay Area has got 2 out of 3. Okay, so we have our own parking spots by and large. We also have the perfect range extender. It's called the other car. Right. And we sort of, if you look at the Bay Area, we've got these big 3. You know, Oakland, San Francisco, and San Jose, but in between, you know, most people actually have their own home. Yeah. And so if you work with PG&E, which is what we're hoping to do, to actually sort of piggyback their efforts on smart metering, when you put a smart meter, why not put a smart charge spot in the same home? And that helps on some of the upfront economics, which today are actually more painful because the word debt has become a 4-letter word, right? On the other hand, we have a great advantage to the Bay Area. If you go to Detroit or Texas and you say, we've got a new product, they'll say, okay, if you give me 50% discount, I'll try it. If you come to the Bay Area and you say, I got a new product, they say, I'll pay you 30% premium to be the first. And so we've got the Innovators advantage in the Bay Area.
Now, in Israel, people tend to park in parking garages, big multi-story parking garages, and so there you've got this sort of these, I presume, like a rack of plugs that go along the bumpers, etc. So that's kind of it's an outside thing. It's weather and all that kind of stuff. In the U.S., it's in the personal garage, right? So then you have to get people to reconfigure their wiring and all that kind of stuff. And that's an easier job for you?
So in the U.S., it's a mix. You've got 2 anchor points for everybody. It's the place of work and the place where you live. The place where you live in the West Coast is usually your home garage. In the East Coast, it's still a shared parking spot. And the place of work is always a sort of a garage type of environment. And so what we found out is most of the work we're going to do is going to usually go through large workplaces. This is, you know, large HP, Intel, Google, Yahoo, perfect places, because if you get a list of employees who are interested, you at least know that you can do their home parking spot by giving them something to, you know, sort of a note for PG&E, and you can do the parking lot for the company, and you're done. You got 2 touch points for that person.
So the companies are going to allow you to put charge spots in their employee lots. They're going to subsidize the cars to some extent as well?
We hope.
We hope. Okay. How will you know where, so you've driven down to the valley, 40 miles, you're pretty much at the end of your range. How do you know where you're there's a spot there for you?
So we actually have a piece of software that resides inside the car and is connected to a back-end system that actually knows every single parking spot, who's parked, when, all that kind of stuff. We don't tell anybody. There's authentication and everything else that goes on. But one of the big things that you're going to get, if you drive our car into San Francisco and you say, I'm going to go to this spot, it'll tell you, here are the 6 parking spots you can go into. And you can pick which one, we'll lock it for you. And just that is worth money.
So you can reserve a parking place in San Francisco?
Yeah. So
nice.
That would be cool.
From ahead of time? Or do you...
Well, you do it as you get closer to that spot. You can sort of get your needs. The same thing we're doing on, because you need to know this big network to optimize it. When you come in, not everybody needs to charge at the same time. Imagine every employee comes into Yahoo in the morning. At 8:15, they all plug and all the cars start charging. The servers go down, right? So what you want is you want to know, Chris comes into Wired early in the morning, doesn't leave until 9 o'clock. Unless it's Tuesday for some reason, lunch you leave, right? So we know that depending on your profile, what priority you are in the charging. And you're paying VIP, so you get sort of a bump up on the charging spots, and all kind of mechanism is done completely transparent behind the scenes. A lot of software, sort of like a Google of electrons, if you want.
Or SAP.
Google.
All right. Tell me a little bit about the car. The car we've seen outside is a 4-door sedan, relatively modest, et cetera. Is that going to be the car that we buy?
That's the prototype 2 is actually a converted SUV. It's we've seen demand in sort of anchor in 2 cars. One is a 4-door, 5-seat sedan, high-end sedan. So people want to feel like they're driving a new car. And the first car that's going to come out is a fairly high-end sedan.
So not the one
not the one that you're seeing up front. Okay. Our goal was to actually have an SUV within about 12 months after the sedan comes out. And it will look roughly this, sort of like that, not necessarily like that. In both cases, the battery comes from below, and so it's fairly fun to drive. It's sort of 0 to 60 sub 10. It's high speed. It's very, very high torque. When you compare it to a gasoline, the same car on gasoline, the electric is about twice faster on acceleration. So
now, when you first started thinking about this, gas was $3 a gallon, or ish. The economy was robust. The car companies were strong competitors. Now the picture's changed. How is gas at $49 a barrel and GM in near bankruptcy and the economy on the going down the tubes? How does that change your model?
So 2 things that I did learn since we started. I started at 50. Our dinner, I think, it was still at $50 a barrel. And we went up to 147. We came back to 50, which feels a bit crazy. But what I did learn is oil is depleting. No matter how you're going to look at it, oil is not coming back into the ground unless we put it back in the ground. We don't know how to put it back in the ground yet. We haven't figured out how to collect it from the fumes. And as a result of that, what's depleting is the easy oil, and what we're finding is the very hard oil. And very hard oil is very expensive to get out of the ground. And so we're sort of on the sliding scale where the cheap stuff is ending and the expensive stuff is coming up. And unfortunately, every year we're adding 40 million more cars. We're adding 70 million cars, 30 million are replacement, 40 million are new, into the list of people that want to buy oil. So it's a parabolic curve, any which way you want to look at it, at the baseline. On top of it, we created an oscillating curve called the economy. When the economy is robust, we go up. When the economy is not robust, or dead as we call it right now, it goes down. And we now know what sort of the gap is. Up is plus 50, down is minus 50. But the medium right now is about 100. And I learned, there's a great group called SARA, Cambridge Energy Research. They're sort of the experts on oil. Unfortunately, they not always tell you the truth because they're paid by the oil companies. But they have a very interesting saying right now. It says at $50 a barrel, countries figure out ways to reduce consumption using science. At $150 a barrel, countries find ways to secure supply using their armies. And we were that close, right? We were $3 close. We were finally back to 50, which gives us enough time to sort of build up infrastructure, big projects, to build up supply chain of these cars. And this is fantastic. It's the best thing that ever happened to us.
Your business model assumes that the cost of electrons is less than the cost of gas. Your margin basically is the economic advantage of driving your car as opposed to another. What is the margin at $50? How much cheaper?
So the fundamentals of our business is we buy batteries and electrons. The battery costs get you to about 4 to 5 cents a mile when you sort of take the entire life of the battery. And electrons cost you between 1 and 2 cents a mile. So
this is including the subsidy for the car?
Including nothing. Base, no taxes, no subsidies, no giveaways. 4 cents to 4 or 5 cents a mile for the battery, 1, 2 cents, depending on whether you use coal or you do what we do, which is use wind and solar at 2 cents. So we're roughly at about 6, 7 cents a mile. If you take the average US consumption about 20 miles per gallon, 25 miles per gallon, we're $1.50 a gallon. Equivalent. If you want to think of us as electric gasoline, we're $1.50 a gallon. $1.50 a gallon is $25 a barrel with no taxation. Now, if you apply European tax, $1.50 a gallon is minus $60 a gallon, minus $60 barrel. So we're okay up to zero. If you go down to minus 60, we're still good. In the US, I don't think you're going to see a $25 barrel anytime soon. So the base, the foundation, the economics of what we do, the physics and the economics, as you guys told me, are extremely solid. Now, if the price goes up to $4 a gallon, we got $2.50 effectively a gallon to play back with. And we're going to give it back to the consumer, to the car company, to whoever it is, to convince them to get addicted to electricity. That's what we do. We get you addicted to electrons.
Now, you said that the source of electricity is going to be green.
Yes.
How do you ensure that?
We make sure that on the margin, we buy the same amount of electricity through a massive long-term power purchase agreement as the amount of cars we put. So Israel, 2 million cars, needs 2 gigawatts of solar. And it's a great story. We went to the Ministry of Infrastructure and said, we want to build a 2 gigawatt solar plant in the desert. And they said, that's too big. And we took a map and we drew a circle, and they said, you guys are nuts. It's a giant swath of land. And I said, what if I told you that we found oil in that spot that could drive every car in the country for the next 50 years? They said, well, we try to look for it, and it's not there. And I said, no, what if we prove that it's there? And they said, if you can prove it, we'd let you dig. So I said, we want to dig up. And we're going to dig up and put solar plant. And what's interesting is for every car on the road, you need to put a reflector, effectively, the size of the car. And that gives you power to drive that car forever. And if you put the two together, you get a zero carbon footprint, infinite virtual oil field.
So in Israel, you're not just in the car business and the battery business and the grid business, but you're also in the solar power generation.
We're buying the power from the generators. So we're buying a 12-year power purchase agreement.
So someone else is doing this anyway.
Yeah, they do it. Yeah.
And in California, likewise,
Same thing.
You will secure.
Yeah. The only place where we don't need to do it is Denmark. It's interesting because Denmark has got the wind, and they don't know how to stop it at night. If you stop a windmill at night, it falls into the water.
Yeah.
And so you got to let it go, but then you get spikes of electricity at night, and if you don't let it go, the grid goes down. So they sell it to the Germans, and they pay them money to take it. It's amazing. They actually get times in which they sell electrons at negative few cents per kilowatt hour. And when we came in and said to the electric company, we'll take it, they were like, oh, great, you got batteries. We love you guys.
Let's talk about other kinds of electric cars. Right now you have a choice between, obviously there's hybrids. These are, the hybrids we drive today are serial hybrids, which is to say that they, you have two engines, one a motor and an engine, both connected to the transmission. You can get a pure electric car in the form of a Tesla, and then you can have what GM is designing, the Volt, which is a, we're doing parallel hybrids, and the Volt is a serial hybrid, which is, it's only electric motors attached to the wheels, and you have a little engine driving a generator if you need it. Let's start with a traditional hybrid, the parallel hybrid, a Prius, etc. What's wrong with that?
So I'll tell you, I got to tell you this story. It's a fantastic story. This Davos 2007, President Paris invited all the car companies to come and talk to them because we didn't have a car company yet. And we invited the big five. 3 didn't show up for some odd reason, you know.
Would they have to be the American ones?
No, I think their jets didn't make it all the way to Davos. The two that did show up were very interesting because one showed up, and they'll remain unnamed, but after Paris told them the story, they said, don't do this project. We'll give you great discount on hybrids. And for 25 minutes, they try to sell us to do hybrids and not to do electric cars. And then Carlos Ghosn, CEO of Renault Nissan, comes in, and Paris tells him the story again, which is the great virtue of Paris. He thought he failed to convince the other guys, so he told it with more vigor. And then Carlos Ghosn looks at him and says, "I'll be your partner. We'll build the car. We can make a fantastic electric car." And so Paris looks at him and says, "You don't want to do hybrids?" And that's why I told this. He says, "Hybrids are like mermaids. When you want fish, you get a woman. You want a woman, you get a fish." And if you look at the problem with the Prius is it's an expensive car with 2 drivetrains. It's got only one way to put energy into it, and that's oil, which gives you sort of a clue that you're not getting anything other than a bit more efficient engine. California has the highest adoption rate of Priuses. The entire country, I think, there's like 1 million Priuses after 10 years. In those 10 years, we added 500 million cars into the population. 1 million of them are hybrids, and they're 20% more efficient. So we got an 0.2 improvement on an 0.2 market. That's not going to save this planet. Okay? And that's the #1 hybrid in the world.
Okay.
So
what about the Volt? What about the serial hybrid?
I think the Volt is a great idea. I think if
this one's a plug. It's a plug hybrid, so you can run it as an electric car all the time. You may never have to use the gas in the tank, but if you do need the gas in the tank, there it is.
The Volt is fantastic in the sense that if you don't have infrastructure, you can't have an electric car that stops when you run out of juice. And so what GM has basically done is they put the power plant in the trunk. Mm-hmm. They force you to give up one of the seats, so you got only 4 seats in a 5-seater. And it falls short on 2 fronts. One, it's expensive. Right? It's a $40,000 car. It's a sort of a $20,000 sedan that costs $40,000 to buy. And that's not going to solve the problem because not a lot of people can finance a $40,000 car today.
Presuming you make the money back with your cost savings.
But you need to convince the consumer to get off the one problem. 85% of the consumer decision at a dealership is the price of the car. So you're coming in and saying, and it was very well articulated in a Wall Street Journal article called 1 Volt, 2 Priuses, which would you take? Okay, so that was that's the starting point. The second point is you got a battery that's bolted on. And in the ultimate wisdom of the car industry, the car guys always tell you, wait until the next battery, it's going to be so great. Like that's going to convince you to go buy it tomorrow morning. It's like they're building in the Osborne syndrome into the car, right? Come buy this car, the next battery will be best, and you won't be able to sell your car. Okay, so it's like you're going into the classic early adopters. It's the people who want to feel like they bought the Newton, right? And knowing that there is going to be something else right after it. And the 2 combos are just devastating to the decision process that happens at the dealership.
So the problem being that it's expensive and that you're locked into certain
a battery technology.
Do we have some miracle battery coming down the road?
The McCain $300 million research project. The problem with the miracle battery is that it doesn't solve any problem. Let's assume for a second that we have a battery that knows how to charge 300 miles in 3 minutes. Okay, it's sort of the gas tank equivalency. Mm-hmm. If you could do that, you're plugging, a 300-mile battery is 75 kilowatt hours, and I know you're a physics guy, so I can talk kilowatt hours. If you charge it in 3 minutes, you got to apply 20 times more power, because it's an hour divided by 3 is 20. So you're plugging in 20 times 75. That's 1.5 megawatts into the car. Now, 1.5 megawatts comes with a sticker on the steering wheel. Please leave the car, take your kids, go behind the wall. If when you come back, you don't have that problem, but I will. If your hair is standing up, that's just static, don't worry. A mega and a half is, people can't fathom that, but 750 apartments turning on and off every single appliance, one shot. I was at Berkeley today, I said, let's go play that trick on PG&E. We'll go to the dorms, and everybody will turn on and off, one shot, every appliance, every 2 minutes. And there was a PG&E guy, and he looked at me with a terrified face. And I said, now imagine 1,000 of these stations across the state. What happens to the grid? He says, it's fried. So even if you had the battery, you don't know how to charge it. So you're digging in the wrong place.
So you're assuming that battery technology will improve on a modest level, pretty much. I mean, I guess I should ask this question: are there enough batteries out there? We have, you're competing with every laptop in the world, every cell phone in the world. You need what, hundreds, if not thousands, of these batteries?
So two things. One, we have a Moore's curve for batteries.
Is it a Moore's curve?
Yeah, we double energy density every 5 years.
Okay.
So it's sort of the Moore's law of batteries. It's not 18 months, it's 5 years. So assume that 5 years after we come out with a battery that can go 120, 150 miles, we'll come out with a battery that goes 150 miles, but it'll be half size and half priced. And then, 5 years later, you come up with a battery that does 150 miles, but it'll be half size. You don't need to carry 300 miles if you can switch batteries. There's no sense, but what you'll have, there'll be 2 bays, and if you really want to go long, you'll have 2 batteries for the duration of a long drive, and that battery will come off at the other end of that drive.
Let me just get a sort of scale here. 100,000 better placed cars in the Bay Area. That many in Israel?
Yeah, Israel will scale by the end of 2011 to about 8,000 a month. So 100,000 a year, roughly.
Denmark a little smaller?
We think Denmark will go faster.
Faster?
Denmark put 180% tax on gasoline cars and 0 on electric.
180, so a car costs twice as much.
If you buy a Camry, 60,000 euro. If you buy the electric equivalents, 20,000 euro. If you still buy the Camry when there is an available electric car, they want you to move to Norway. You failed the IQ test.
Australia, another 100,000.
Australia is a 15 million car country, so it buys about 1.5 million cars a year. Our expectation in Australia is it's roughly going to be in the 500,000, 300,000-400,000 when it starts ramping up.
And you may have some other announcements coming out of other places. So we're looking at on the order of maybe 500,000 cars a year.
It will scale fairly quickly to 500,000, 1 million cars.
Okay, 1 million cars a year, and each one of these cars has how many batteries?
Lots.
Thousands?
Think of it as today's collective lithium-ion battery industry can serve about 100,000 electric cars. A year.
So you're not only competing with all the laptops and cell phones in the world, but you actually need 5 times as much.
You're creating a new market for them because we're willing to pay more money for the battery because we're replacing oil versus sort of prices that, and it's a bit different chemistry in the sense that we don't take batteries that fit in laptops. We actually take batteries that don't explode.
Yes, handy that. But just to get a sense of scale here, I mean, you're not just reinventing the grid, reinventing the car, reinventing the renewable energy. You're also creating the biggest lithium-ion battery consumer on the planet by a factor of like 5 to 10.
So we've been optimistic. I'm going to be maybe a bit pessimistic. There's a number from MIT that's been running around in this industry now. It says by 2016 we'll have 10 million electric cars on the road. It's the most optimistic and the most pessimistic study at the same time. To go from 100,000 cars in 2011 to 10 million cars 2016, 5 years later, we need to scale an entire industry, entire supply chain, by a factor of 100x. This is building 3 Googles in 5 years, 2 Microsofts in 5 years. Unfortunately, this is not in bits, this is not in websites, this is in folding metals and chemistry and supply chain. It's the biggest industrial growth you've ever seen. On the other hand, if we only got 10 million cars by 2016, we got 490 million gasoline cars until then. There's no planet, there's no economy, there are no car, well, most car companies are gone anyway, but there's big meltdown. So if you look at it from a perspective of what needs to get done, we need 100 million cars in 2016, a 1,000-fold increase. And there are only 2 countries in the world that know how to do that, China and the US. So somebody needs to come up and either have a plan in the US, because we know how to do it. We did it in 1941, right? We sort of stopped making cars, made tanks. We just forgot to call them and say, stop making big tanks, make small cars. And the Chinese will do it the Chinese way. They'll come up and say, this city makes cars, that city makes engine, that city makes battery, that city makes power electronics, that city makes all the stuff you need to connect. 50 million people, you move here, and that's it. And they've just kick-started Car 2.0 in China.
Am I hearing you right, that your plan is for the Chinese to copy you and do it themselves?
I think so.
And you're fine with that?
Look, if China announces that it's going to do that, the US will have to do it. The Europeans will figure out they have to do that. And I'm sort of done. I can quit.
Well, I was going to ask one last question, which is, that's the optimistic scenario by which you get pirated on a massive scale. How could it go wrong? What keeps you awake at night?
Depending if it's a good night or a bad night.
Let's go for the bad night.
Bad night, $150 a barrel. $150 a barrel, $200 a barrel, you get a massive geopolitical dislocation. Because we can't afford, I mean, look, at $150 a barrel, we paid $700 billion a year. And it sounds familiar, that number, $700 billion? If we do it 2-3 years, the green buck is a piece of paper.
So that's you as a world citizen. What about you as the CEO of a company?
Oh, that's the good night. If the battery exchange system takes 4 minutes instead of 3 minutes, I mean, that's the scope of the technological problem we got are so small, so minute compared to the massive problem we're tackling. There's no science in it. I mean, it's basic robotics. The funny part.
Basic robotics.
Yeah. Look, you know robotics. We have a single dimensional arm going up and down. How hard can that be?
We'll find out.